The great hall of the Galactic Military Academy fell silent as the old commander walked through the doors. His name was Vorthax, and he was a legend among the Etherian Dominion. His body showed the marks of 60 wars. Deep scars crossed his hard shell. 2 of his 4 eyes had turned cloudy with age. His legs moved slowly, and each step seemed to cost him great effort. But when he reached the stage and turned to face the young cadets, something changed. His remaining good eyes burned with a fire that made every young officer in the room sit up straight. This was not a tired old soldier. This was a survivor of something terrible. The room was filled with the best young minds of the Dominion. They wore fresh uniforms without a single mark of battle. Their eyes were bright with dreams of glory and victory. They had studied war in books and simulations. They believed they understood conflict. Vorthax looked at them and felt a deep sadness in his hearts. He had been just like them once. Young, eager, foolish. "You know why you are here," he said. His voice was rough like stones grinding together. "The High Council has decided that humanity will be discussed in your training. They believe you should understand this species before you encounter them in the galaxy." He paused and let his eyes move across the room. Some cadets looked bored. Others looked curious. A few even looked amused. After all, humans were a young species. They had only been traveling among the stars for 200 years. The Etherian Dominion had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 10,000 years. "I see doubt in your faces," Vorthax continued. "You have read the reports. You know that humans are physically weak compared to us. They have soft skin that tears easily. They cannot survive in vacuum for more than a minute. Their technology is primitive. Their ships are slow. Their weapons are basic." A young cadet in the front row nodded with confidence. Vorthax had been watching this one. His uniform was perfect. His posture was proud. He was clearly from a wealthy family with a long military tradition. "You there?" Vorthax pointed at him. "What is your name?" "Kethral, Fleet Admiral, son of Admiral Kethvos." "And what do you think of humans, young Kethral?" The young cadet stood up straight. "They are an inferior species, Fleet Admiral. Their expansion into space has been slow and clumsy. They fight among themselves constantly. Their biology makes them weak. I believe they pose no real threat to the Dominion." Vorthax was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something that shocked everyone in the room. He laughed. But it was not a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had seen too much darkness. "Inferior." He repeated the word slowly. "Weak. No threat." He walked to the edge of the stage, his old legs struggling with each step. "I want you to look at me, young Kethral. Look at my scars. Look at my damaged eyes. Look at the way my left arm hangs uselessly at my side." The cadets stared at him with new attention. "I have fought against 37 different species in my career. I have faced the Crixtal Swarm and their endless waves of soldiers. I have battled the Silicon Mines and their cold, perfect logic. I have stood against the Voidwalkers who can phase through solid matter." He raised his damaged arm as high as it would go. "None of them did this to me. None of them broke my body and haunted my sleep for 60 years. He let his arm fall. Humans did this. Humans with their soft skin and primitive weapons. Humans who had been among the stars for less than a century when I first met them." The room was completely silent now. Even the arrogant young Kethral had gone pale. Vorthax walked back to the center of the stage. Behind him, a massive screen flickered to life. It showed a beautiful blue and green world floating in the darkness of space. Oceans covered most of its surface. White clouds swirled across its atmosphere. It looked peaceful, innocent. "This is Earth," Vorthax said. "The human homeworld. It is not a remarkable planet. Its sun is average. Its position in the galaxy is unremarkable. There is nothing special about the chemistry or physics of this world." He turned to face the image. "And yet, this small world produced the most terrifying soldiers I have ever encountered." A cadet raised her hand. She was smaller than the others, with careful eyes that missed nothing. "Fleet Admiral." "With respect, how can that be true? Everything we have learned tells us that humans are not exceptional warriors. They are not even unified. They have hundreds of different governments and factions." Vorthax nodded slowly. "You ask good questions. And you are correct that humans are not unified. They fight among themselves constantly. They have different languages, different beliefs, different goals." He turned back to face the cadets. "But here is what you must understand. What makes humans dangerous is not their strength or their technology or their unity. What makes them dangerous is something else entirely, something that took us far too long to understand. He raised one clawed finger. Humans do not know when to give up. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Every species in the galaxy has a breaking point. Push them hard enough, hurt them badly enough, and they will surrender. They will accept defeat. They will bow to the stronger force. This is natural. This is logical. This is how survival works. Vorthax's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow filled the entire hall. Humans have no breaking point. You can burn their cities. You can kill their families. You can destroy everything they have ever loved. And they will keep fighting. They will crawl through the ashes with broken bones and dying breaths. And they will find a way to hurt you. He walked slowly across the stage. In the next hours, I will tell you stories. Not theories. Not reports. Stories from my own experience. Stories of what I saw with my own eyes and what I will never be able to forget. He stopped and faced them one final time. When I am finished, you will understand why the Etherian Dominion no longer goes to war with humanity. You will understand why we pay them respect even though we are older and more powerful. You will understand why I wake up screaming in the night even after 60 years. The old commander lowered himself into a chair that had been placed for him on the stage. His old bones creaked, and for a moment he looked like exactly what he was, a tired, broken soldier at the end of his days. Make yourselves comfortable, young ones. What I am about to tell you will change everything you think you know about war. And with those words, Fleet Admiral Vorthax began to share the frightening chronicles of human conflict. Vorthax closed his eyes for a moment, gathering his thoughts. When he opened them again, the cadets saw something new in his expression. It was the look of someone about to revisit a nightmare. The year was 2847 by human counting. He began. I was young then, strong, ambitious. I had won 12 campaigns against lesser species, and I believed myself to be invincible. The High Council gave me command of a fleet and sent me to deal with a small problem at the edge of our territory. The screen behind him changed to show a rocky world covered in craters. It was an ugly planet, brown and gray, with no beauty to speak of. This was Colony Reach, a human mining settlement on a moon that orbited a gas giant. They had been there for 20 years, digging precious metals from the ground. 12,000 humans lived there, miners, engineers, their families. Vorthax paused and looked at his audience. We did not go there to make war. We went to claim what was rightfully ours. You see, the moon of Reach sat in territory that the Dominion had marked as our own centuries before humans even left their planet. They had no right to be there. A cadet raised his hand. Did you try to negotiate, Fleet Admiral? Vorthax nodded slowly. We did. We sent messages explaining that they were in our space. We gave them 30 days to leave. We were being generous, we thought. Fair. His mandibles clicked together in what might have been a bitter smile. The humans sent back one message. Just 7 words. We built this. We stay. Come try. Several cadets shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Such defiance against the Dominion was unthinkable. I arrived at Reach with 400 warships, battle cruisers, destroyers, carriers filled with fighters. Enough firepower to crack the moon in half if we wished. The humans had nothing. No military ships, no orbital defenses, just mining equipment and a few civilian transports. Vorthax stood up from his chair and walked toward the screen. The image zoomed in on the colony itself. A collection of domes and underground tunnels spread across the surface. I gave them one final chance to surrender. I told them that resistance was pointless. I promised that if they left peacefully, we would let them go without harm. He turned to face the cadets. Their leader was a woman named Sarah Chen. She was old for a human, with white hair and deep lines on her face. She had been a miner for 40 years. She had helped build Colony Reach from the first day. The screen showed an image of the woman. She was small and thin, wearing worn work clothes covered in dust. She did not look like a warrior. She looked like someone's grandmother. Sarah Chen looked directly into the communication screen and said words I will never forget. She said, "My grandfather built the first dome here. My children were born here. My husband is buried here. This is our home. If you want it, you will have to kill every last one of us." Vorthax was silent for a moment. I thought she was bluffing. I thought that when we began our attack, they would quickly realize their situation was hopeless and surrender. That was what any logical species would do. He returned to his chair and sat down heavily. The siege lasted 11 months. Gasps filled the room. 11 months against 400 warships with no military resources seemed impossible. From the first moment, the humans showed us that we had underestimated them. They had spent years preparing for this day. They had dug tunnels deep into the moon, far beyond what we had detected. They had converted their mining equipment into weapons. The same lasers they used to cut rock could cut through our armor. The same charges they used to blast ore could destroy our landing craft. Vorthax described the early days of the siege. Etherian troops landed on the surface, expecting easy victory. Instead, they found hell. Humans appeared from hidden tunnels, attacked, and vanished before the Etherians could respond. Mining vehicles had been armored with metal plates and mounted with weapons. The humans knew every crater, every ridge, every shadow on that moon. We had superior numbers, superior weapons, superior everything, and we were losing soldiers every single day. The old commander's voice grew heavy with memory. But that was not the worst of it. The worst was what they did with their civilian ships. The screen showed recordings from Etherian warships. Small vessels, clearly not built for combat, were flying directly at the massive battle cruisers. They called them ram ships. They took their cargo haulers, their passenger transports, their family vehicles. They filled them with mining explosives. And then, they flew them straight into our warships. The recordings showed the terrible impacts. Small ships crashing into Etherian vessels and detonating with incredible force. At first we thought they were using automated controls. Drones. No living being would fly to certain death like that. Vorthax's voice became quiet. We were wrong. Every ship had a pilot. Human men and women who knew they would not survive. They volunteered for these missions. They kissed their families goodbye, climbed into their ships, and flew to their deaths so that their people might survive one more day. A young female cadet in the back of the room had tears in her eyes. Why? She whispered. Why would they do that? Vorthax looked at her with something like sympathy. That is the question I have been asking for 60 years, and I still do not fully understand the answer. He described how the siege continued, month after month. The Etherians controlled the space around the moon completely. No supplies could reach the colony. No reinforcements could come. The humans were slowly starving, slowly running out of ammunition and medicine. By the 9th month, we knew they had almost nothing left. Our scouts reported that their children were eating one small meal a day. Their wounded were dying because they had no more medical supplies. Logic said they would surrender. They had to surrender. The old commander shook his head slowly. Instead, they attacked. 1,000 humans, most of them half-starved and wounded, launched an assault on our main landing base. They came at night, through tunnels we did not know existed. They fought with mining tools, with kitchen knives, with their bare hands when their weapons ran empty. He looked directly at the young Kethral, who had been so confident before. I led the defense of that base personally. I watched a human woman with a broken arm and a wound in her stomach continue fighting until she literally could not move anymore. Even then, as she lay dying, she grabbed the leg of one of my officers and held on so that another human could strike him down. The room was completely silent. We won that battle. We killed most of those 1,000 humans. But they had done what they intended. They had destroyed our supply depot and killed 2 of our generals. The siege ended in the 11th month. When Etherian forces finally broke through to the main colony, they found only 847 humans still alive. 847 out of 12,000. We had won, Vorthax said. The moon was ours, but we had lost 43 ships and 23,000 soldiers. Against miners, against civilians, against families. He pointed to the image of Sarah Chen. She was one of the survivors. When we took her prisoner, she could barely stand. She had lost her husband, 2 of her children, and most of her friends. She had not eaten a full meal in weeks. Vorthax leaned forward, and yet, when I stood before her and told her that her resistance had been foolish and pointless, she looked at me with those strange human eyes and smiled. She smiled and said, "You think this is over? You have no idea what you have started." The old commander stood up. I thought she was simply refusing to accept defeat. I thought it was empty words from a broken woman. He paused for a long moment. I was wrong. What Sarah Chen said that day was not a threat. It was a promise. And the humans would spend the next 10 years keeping that promise. Vorthax paused to drink water from a container beside his chair. His throat was dry from speaking, but that was not the only reason for the pause. The memories he was about to share were the ones that still woke him at night. After the siege of Reach, the Dominion celebrated. He continued. We had lost ships and soldiers, yes, but we had crushed human resistance. We had taken their colony. We had shown them the power of the Etherian fleet. He set down his water container. The High Council believed the matter was finished. Humans were a small species with limited resources. They controlled only a handful of systems. What could they possibly do against an empire that stretched across 1,000 worlds? A knowing, bitter expression crossed his scarred face. We waited for the humans to negotiate. That is what every species does after defeat. They send diplomats. They discuss terms. They find ways to move forward without more bloodshed. Vorthax looked at his audience. The humans sent nothing. No messages. No diplomats. No requests for their captured people. For 3 years, complete silence. He let that sink in. We thought perhaps they had accepted their place. Perhaps the lesson of Reach had taught them to stay in their own territory. Perhaps they were too busy fighting among themselves as they always seemed to be. The screen behind him flickered and changed. It showed a map of the Dominion's territory. Thousands of star systems marked in deep purple. Then, in the 4th year, we received reports from the outer systems. Ships were disappearing. Small patrol vessels at first, then larger cargo ships. Then an entire listening post with 200 personnel simply went silent. Red markers began appearing on the map. We sent investigation teams. What they found was troubling. Our ships had been destroyed with weapons we did not recognize. They were crude and simple, but incredibly effective. Our listening post had been attacked by a force that left no survivors and no traces. Vorthax stood and walked toward the map. At first we did not believe it was the humans. How could it be? They had no real military. They had no advanced weapons. They had been defeated. He pointed to a cluster of systems near Dominion space, but the attacks continued. Every month, more ships lost, more stations destroyed. And then, on the anniversary of Reach, they finally announced themselves. The screen changed to show a recorded message. A human male stood in the center of the image. He was young, with a hard face and cold eyes. Behind him was a symbol that the cadets did not recognize, a clenched fist holding a broken chain. This is Admiral James Wright of the Human Defense Coalition. The recording played. For 3 years, we have been preparing, building, learning from you. Today, we begin. The message ended. Within 1 month, the humans launched a full-scale invasion of Dominion territory. Vorthax returned to his chair, his movements slow and heavy. How? The cadets asked me this same question when I taught at the academy years ago. How did a species we had defeated build a war fleet in 3 years? He explained that the humans had done the impossible. They had studied every piece of Etherian technology they had captured at Reach. They had taken apart engines and weapons and shields and learned how they worked. Then they had rebuilt them better. Humans are not the most intelligent species in the galaxy, Vorthax said, but they have a talent for taking ideas from others and improving them. What took us centuries to develop, they figured out in years, not because they were smarter, but because they were desperate, because they were angry. The map showed the progress of the human fleet. Red arrows pushed deep into Dominion territory. The High Council expected a war of territory. That is how civilized species fight. You take a system, they take a system. You destroy a fleet, they destroy a fleet. Eventually, one side realizes they cannot win and negotiations begin. Vorthax's mandibles clicked in a pattern the cadets had never heard before. Humans do not fight that way. They do not believe in what we call proportional response. He explained the concept. In galactic warfare, there were unwritten rules. If an enemy destroyed one of your worlds, you destroyed one of theirs. If they killed 1,000 of your people, you killed 1,000 of theirs. Balance. Proportion. These rules prevented wars from becoming too destructive. They allowed enemies to eventually become trading partners again. When we took Reach and killed 11,000 humans, we expected if the humans ever recovered enough to fight back that they would try to take Reach back. Perhaps destroy one of our mining colonies. Something equal. Something proportional. Vorthax's voice became cold. Instead, the humans burned 17 of our systems. The cadets stared in disbelief. They did not just attack military targets. They destroyed everything: orbital stations, ground bases, civilian infrastructure, ships, buildings, power plants. In the Korath system, they collapsed the main space station into the planet below. 40,000 Etherian civilians died in moments. A young cadet raised a shaking hand. That is a war crime. Against all galactic law. Vorthax nodded slowly. We said the same thing. We broadcast to the entire galaxy that the humans were monsters, that they had violated every rule of civilized warfare. He paused. The human response came from Admiral Wright himself. He said, "You came to Reach with 400 warships. You besieged 12,000 miners for 11 months. You killed our children, our elderly, our families. You talk about rules and laws and civilization. Here is our only rule. Hurt one of us, and we will never stop until your entire civilization begs for mercy." The old commander looked down at his damaged arm. The High Council did not understand. They thought the humans were bluffing. They believed that if we struck back hard enough, the humans would follow galactic customs and seek peace. He raised his damaged arm. This is what happened when we struck back. Vorthax described the Battle of Etherian Prime, the great battle that nearly reached the Dominion homeworld itself. Human ships fought with a fury that the Etherians could not match. They used tactics that made no logical sense, sacrificing ships and crews in ways that should have been wasteful. But that was not the point, he explained. The humans were not trying to win efficient victories. They were trying to make us afraid. And it worked. He told stories of human soldiers who continued fighting with wounds that should have killed them. He described human pilots who used their damaged ships as weapons, ramming Etherian vessels rather than retreating. He spoke of a human cruiser that was completely disabled, dead in space with no engines or weapons, whose crew used emergency escape pods as missiles against the Etherian ships that came to capture them. Every time we thought we understood their limits, they showed us new depths of determination. Every time we thought we had won, they found a way to hurt us one more time. The war lasted 10 years. The Dominion, despite having far greater resources and territory, could not break the humans. They could not even slow them down. In the end, Vorthax said quietly, it was the Dominion that asked for peace, not the humans. We offered them reach back. We offered them reparations. We offered them territory. He looked at the cadets with tired eyes. The human ambassador sat across from our High Council. And do you know what she said? She said, "These terms are acceptable, but they are not why we will stop. We will stop because we have taught you what we wanted to teach you. Harm one human, and your entire civilization pays the price. Remember this lesson." The old commander was silent for a long moment. That was 60 years ago. The Dominion has never attacked a human settlement since. We trade with them now. We smile at their diplomats. We pretend that we are equals, that the past is forgotten. He looked at his damaged arm again. But I remember. The High Council remembers. And we make very, very sure that no young fool ever gives the humans a reason to teach us that lesson again. Vorthax sat in silence for a long moment. The cadets watched him with wide eyes, their earlier arrogance completely gone. They had come to this lecture expecting to learn about an inferior species. Instead, they were learning about something far more troubling. "What I have told you so far explains how humans fight," the old commander said. "But it does not explain why they fight the way they do. For that, you must understand something about human psychology that took us decades to discover." He gestured, and the screen behind him displayed a single word in the human language. Spite. This word has no direct translation in our language, Vorthax explained. We had to create a new word when we learned what it meant. Even now, I am not certain we fully understand it. He stood up and walked slowly across the stage. Spite is the willingness to harm yourself in order to harm an enemy. It is the choice to accept loss, pain, even death, simply to ensure that your opponent suffers alongside you. The cadets looked confused. The concept seemed to make no sense from a survival standpoint. "I see your confusion," Vorthax said. "Let me explain with a story. A true story from my own experience." He returned to his chair and settled into it. During the war, there was a great battle in the Kethra Nebula. This was not a minor fight. Both sides had committed massive fleets. The winner would control a critical path between human and Dominion space. The screen showed the nebula, a vast cloud of colorful gases hiding millions of kilometers of dangerous space. The battle was fierce, but it was going well for us. We had destroyed many human ships and lost few of our own. Their main fleet was retreating. Victory was certain. Vorthax's voice grew heavy. But one human ship was left behind. A dreadnought called the Unconquered. It was badly damaged. Its engines were failing. Its weapons were mostly destroyed. It was slowly dying in the darkness of the nebula. He paused to gather himself. The Unconquered had escape pods. Many of them were still functional. The crew, nearly 4,000 humans, could have abandoned ship. They could have drifted in the nebula until rescue arrived or surrendered to our forces. Either choice would have let them survive. The old commander looked at the floor. Instead, the captain of the Unconquered, a woman named Martinez, gave an order that still haunts my dreams. She ordered her crew to overload the reactor and set a collision course for our flagship. A cadet in the front row gasped. But that is insane. They gained nothing from such an action. Vorthax nodded slowly. That is what we thought. Strategically, their sacrifice was almost meaningless. Our flagship was large, but it was not critical to the battle. We had already won. Destroying it would not change the outcome. He looked up at the cadet, and yet 4,000 humans chose to die rather than surrender. They flew their broken ship straight into ours. The explosion killed them all, and it killed 200 of our officers, including 3 admirals. The screen showed the final moments captured by Etherian sensors. The massive human ship, trailing fire and debris, accelerating toward the Etherian flagship. No attempt to escape, no attempt to negotiate, just a final, terrible charge. We recovered the communication records from our flagship. Vorthax continued. In the final moments, Captain Martinez sent one last message to our commander. She said, "You have won the battle, but I want you to know that you will never forget us. Every time you celebrate this victory, you will remember that we were here, that we made you pay. That is enough for me." He repeated the final words slowly. "That is enough for me. This is spite," Vorthax explained. "The willingness to accept complete destruction simply to hurt an enemy. There is no logic to it. There is no survival benefit. It is pure, burning desire to make an opponent suffer, regardless of cost." He walked to the edge of the stage. "We have studied this human trait extensively. Our psychologists have written thousands of papers trying to understand it. They have developed theories and models and explanations." Vorthax spread his hands in a gesture of helplessness. "And yet, we still cannot truly grasp it, because spite is connected to other human emotions that we find equally alien. Revenge, pride, defiance, the human ability to hold anger in their hearts for years, even generations, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back." He told them about human history, about conflicts on their homeworld that lasted for centuries because neither side was willing to give up. He described blood feuds that passed from parent to child for generations. He explained how humans would remember insults and injuries for decades and wait patiently for revenge. "There is a human saying," Vorthax said, "revenge is a dish best served cold." This means that the best revenge comes after waiting, after planning, after the enemy has forgotten that you are still angry. He let that sink in. Now imagine facing such a species in war. You may defeat them today. You may destroy their fleets and conquer their worlds. But you can never truly beat them, because in the back of their minds, they are already planning how to hurt you back. Not next year, not next decade, perhaps not even in their lifetime. But someday. A cadet raised her hand. Her voice trembled slightly. "Fleet Admiral, are you saying that humans never forgive? That they always seek revenge?" Vorthax considered the question carefully. "No, that is not quite right. Humans can forgive. They can make peace. They can become friends with former enemies. We have seen this many times in their history." He held up a clawed finger. "But they choose when to forgive. You cannot make them forgive. You cannot force them to forget. If a human decides that you have wronged them beyond forgiveness, then you will face their spite until one of you is destroyed." He returned to his chair. "During the war, we captured many human prisoners. We treated them well, hoping that this would encourage them to cooperate, to share information, to accept their defeat." His voice became soft. "Even prisoners who knew they would never escape, who knew they would die in our cells, refused to help us. They spit in the faces of their interrogators. They refused food and water. They chose slow, painful death over giving us anything. Vorthax shook his head in wonder. One prisoner, a young pilot named Thomas something, I cannot remember his full name, was dying from wounds we could not heal. He had hours to live. Our medical officer offered him painkillers, comfort, anything he wanted. The old commander's eyes seemed to look into the past. This dying boy looked up at our doctor and laughed. He said, I could have ejected. I could have let your ships capture me safely. Instead, I stayed in my cockpit and fired every weapon I had until your fighters shot me down. I got 2 of them. 2 of your pilots are dead because of me. That is worth more than any comfort you can offer. Vorthax was quiet for a moment. He died an hour later. Still laughing. The room was heavy with silence. This is what we face when we fight humans. Not just soldiers. Not just weapons. We face a species that will accept any cost, any sacrifice, any suffering, as long as they can hurt us in return. There is no mathematical model that can predict such behavior. There is no strategy that can counter it. You cannot threaten someone who is willing to die just to make you bleed. He stood one final time. Every species in the galaxy fears death. Every species wants to survive. We can use that fear against them. We can make them submit by threatening to destroy them. His old eyes burned with intensity. Humans fear death too, but they fear something more than death. They fear surrender. They fear giving up. They fear letting their enemies win without pain, and that fear is stronger than their fear of dying. Vorthax looked at each cadet in turn. So when you face humans, remember the unconquered. Remember Captain Martinez flying her dying ship into our flagship. Remember Thomas the pilot, laughing as he died because he had killed 2 of our people. His voice dropped to a whisper. And ask yourself, are you willing to pay the price that humans will demand? Because they will always, always make you pay. The lecture hall was completely silent. Hours had passed since Vorthax began speaking, and the young cadets who had entered so confidently now sat with pale faces and troubled eyes. The universe they thought they understood had been replaced by something far more complicated and frightening. Vorthax finished his water and set the container aside. His body ached from sitting so long, and the old wounds that never fully healed were sending sharp pains through his shell. But he was not finished yet. He had one final lesson to teach. You have heard my stories, he said, his voice tired but steady. You have learned about the siege of Reach, about the war that followed, about the human concept of spite. But I have not yet told you the most important thing. He rose from his chair with great effort, refusing the help that a nearby attendant offered. This last part, he would deliver standing. After the war ended, after we signed the peace treaty and paid our reparations, something unexpected happened. The humans began to change. The screen behind him showed images of human worlds, not military bases or warships, but cities and farms and children playing in parks. They stopped preparing for war against us. They reduced their military fleets. They opened trade routes and cultural exchanges. They began to act like any other peaceful species in the galaxy. Vorthax walked slowly across the stage. Some of my colleagues believed this was a trap. They thought the humans were pretending to be peaceful while secretly building weapons to destroy us. We watched them carefully for decades, waiting for the betrayal. He shook his head. It never came. The humans genuinely wanted peace. They wanted to trade and explore and build. They wanted their children to grow up without fear of Etherian warships in their skies. The old commander stopped and faced his audience. This confused us for many years. How could the same species that fought with such terrible fury become so peaceful? How could the people who flew their ships into our fleet now want to share meals with us and learn our languages? He raised one clawed finger. The answer is something we call the sleeping giant. It is a human concept, from a war in their history long before they came to the stars. The screen showed an image of an ancient human text, translated into Etherian. Centuries ago, on their homeworld, one human nation attacked another without warning. They destroyed ships and killed thousands. They believed they had won a great victory. Vorthax's voice grew heavy. The leader of the attacking nation is said to have spoken words that proved terribly true. He said, I fear we have awakened a sleeping giant and filled him with terrible resolve. He let those words hang in the air. The nation that was attacked rose up with fury that shocked the entire world. They fought for years until their attackers were completely defeated. Not just beaten, destroyed. Their cities were burned, Their armies were scattered. They never threatened anyone again. Vorthax looked at his young audience. This is what humans are. A sleeping giant. When left in peace, they build and create and dream. They write poetry and make music and explore the universe with wonder in their eyes. They are curious and friendly, and surprisingly kind. His expression hardened. But wake them up, hurt their families, threaten their homes, and you will face something that does not stop, does not forgive, does not care about the cost. You will face 4,000 people flying a dying ship into your flagship just to make you remember them. You will face mothers fighting with kitchen knives, and children carrying ammunition through collapsed tunnels. He pointed at the cadets. You will face spite, pure, burning, eternal spite. The kind of anger that human mothers pass to their daughters and fathers pass to their sons. The kind of hatred that survives across generations. Waiting patiently for the moment of revenge, Vorthax walked back to the center of the stage. After the war, I spent many years studying humans. I learned their languages. I read their history. I even made friends among them, if you can believe it. A small, sad smile crossed his scarred face. One of those friends was a human historian named Elizabeth. She was old, like me. She had lived through the war as a child. Her father had died in the fighting. He paused. I asked her once if she hated me, if she hated all Etherians for what we had done to her people. Do you know what she said? The cadets waited in silence. She said, Vorthax, I could hate you. I have every reason to hate you. But I choose not to. I choose to believe that the war made both our species wiser. I choose to hope that my grandchildren and yours will grow up as friends. Vorthax's voice became soft. Then she looked at me with those strange human eyes and said, But if the Etherian Dominion ever attacks humanity again, I want you to know that I will pick up a weapon myself. I am 80 years old and my hands shake. But I will fight. My grandchildren will fight. Every human who can hold a weapon will fight. And this time, we will not stop until the Dominion is a memory. He let that sink in. This is what you must understand. Humans are not warriors by nature. They do not love violence. They would rather build than destroy, create than kill. But they have a line, a boundary that must not be crossed. And if you cross that line, you will discover that there is no force in the galaxy more dangerous than a human who has been pushed too far. The old commander looked at each cadet one final time. I am 140 years old. I have fought in 60 campaigns. I have faced the most terrifying species in the galaxy. And I am here today to tell you one simple truth. He straightened his damaged body as much as he could. Do not fight humans. Do not threaten humans. Do not give humans any reason to see you as an enemy. Trade with them, learn from them, respect them, and pray every night that they continue to see you as a friend. Vorthax turned and walked slowly toward the exit. His old legs struggled with each step. His damaged arm hung uselessly at his side. But his voice carried clearly across the silent hall. Because if they ever see you as an enemy truly, deeply, in their hearts, then you have already lost. You just do not know it yet. He reached the door and paused, turning his head slightly. I have given you knowledge that the High Council wanted kept secret for decades. I have shared memories that still give me nightmares. I have done this because I believe you deserve the truth. His final words were barely above a whisper. Never wake the sleeping giant. Never fill them with terrible resolve. That is my warning. That is my wisdom. That is everything I learned in 60 years of carrying these scars. The old fleet admiral walked through the door and disappeared into the corridor beyond. For a long time, no one in the lecture hall moved or spoke. The cadets sat in silence, staring at the empty stage where the ancient warrior had stood. Everything they had believed about humans, about war, about the galaxy itself had been shattered. Finally, young Kethral, the proud cadet who had spoken so confidently at the beginning, broke the silence. His voice was small and humbled. I think, he said slowly, that I need to change my thesis paper. No one laughed. They were too busy thinking about sleeping giants and dying ships and grandmothers who would pick up weapons at the age of 80. Outside the academy, Vorthax stood alone, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the darkness of space, humans were living their lives in peace, building, creating, dreaming, sleeping. The old commander offered a silent prayer to whatever gods might be listening. Let them sleep, he thought. Let them dream their peaceful dreams. Let them never have reason to wake, because he had seen what happened when the giant opened its eyes, and he would carry that memory until the day he died.